In this video, we're going to learn a new set of common affixes that show up in the English language in these kind of classically compounded or classically borrowed words. So last time we talked about a set of some prefixes and suffixes, and now we're just going to add to that. So I want to start with our prefixes, and like before, I'm going to give you the prefix, I'm going to tell you the definition and give you an example, and I'll note which language it comes from, and again, you don't have to memorize that, but it can be a very useful reference to know. And as before, too, this whole list is also available as a PDF on the Canvas site. So, that being said, first up is ambi. Ambi is a prefix that comes from a Latin. There's actually a really similar Greek one we'll learn later, amphi, with a PH instead of a B. And they both mean something like both or on both sides. So we see it most often as both. Think of the word amphibian. An amphibian literally comes from both, and the bios is from life. And it's the idea that it can live in two different ways. An amphibian can live on the land or in the water, so it can have both ways of life. Next up is anti, A-N-T-I. Anti means against, opposite, and sometimes it can also mean something like instead of. This comes from Greek, and we see it in words. Frequently it's hyphenated at the beginning, kind of like non, which we talked about before. Not always, but often. So a word like anti-establishment, which is hyphenated, it means that you are against the established institutions of society. You are opposed or against them. Now we have contra, which is from Latin and has the exact same meaning. It's against or opposite. It's not used for instead ever, though. And so it shows up usually not hyphenated in this case. It's usually just spelled along with the rest of the word. And it shows up in words like contravene. So we're going to learn V-E-N eventually. It's just like kind of like to go. And so to contravene is to go against, right? You might hear contravene in thinking about like drug interactions as something contravenes. It works against or goes against the action of another drug. All right, next up, a sort of pair of opposites from Greek. Dys, D-Y-S, which means bad, ill, abnormal, something like that. And eu, E-U, also from Greek, which means good, well. And so they are opposites to each other. For dys, maybe the most common word with dys in English, or one that at least comes to my mind, is dystopia or dysfunction, right? Something that is dysfunctional, functions poorly, badly. A dystopia is a bad place. Whereas the EU, this is a less common prefix admittedly, but it shows up in words like eugenics. And eugenics is a study, a science of good origin, good birth, good race, essentially, right? So it is that attempt to create a superior race through breeding. I'll note too with eugenics, because I don't add this officially to our list. We've studied ik as a suffix, as a adjectival suffix from Greek, and here we have ICS, and it shows up in a number of areas of study, like mathematics. And you will see this IC with the S at the end is sometimes used instead of regular ik for an area of study or science. But both show up. So we'll see things like you talk about studying music or arithmetic or logic, but you study mathematics, right? They're used. There's kind of a time difference where earlier on it was just ik, later ones tend to be iks. So it just is a matter of when it entered the language. But the meaning is the same. Okay. Another set of opposites. We have hetero and homo. And as before, like with micro and macro, those O's are technically not part of the prefix. They're technically what's called the infix that links the prefix to the root. But you can just think of it as having it because the vast majority of the time that O will be there. Okay, so hetero means different, while homo means the same. All right, so we see this, for instance, in the difference between heterosexual and homosexual, and it refers to the gender of the gender that you are attracted to. So if you are attracted to the opposite, the different gender of yourself, then you are heterosexual, and if you are attracted to the same gender, then you are homosexual. Here's another set. I'm going to do these together. We'll do neo Meso, and Paleo. Oops. Gotta get the O in there. I think on the handout I wrote Paleo with an A after the L, like P-A-L-A-E. And that's a perfectly acceptable spelling. It's more common in British English. I just wasn't thinking. In American English, we tend to drop that A, and it's just P-A-L-E-O is our prefix. But neo here is new. Meso is middle. And paleo is old. And we use these prefixes often to describe time, but not necessarily. Meso can also have a spatial sense of middle as well. One of the most common places that this set shows up is in describing the different terms for the periods of the Stone Age. So the Stone Age is the period of time when human beings use stone to make their tools and equipment. And the oldest phase is called the Old Stone Age, or the Paleolithic, lith here meaning stone. The middle stage is the Mesolithic, Middle Stone Age, and then the latest stage was the Neolithic, or New Stone Age. So going forward in time from the Paleo to the Meso to the Neolithic. So we can use these to refer to time, and with Meso, again, it can also have a spatial sense. All right, let's see, some others. Oh, another pair of opposites. We've got meso and feel. This O is very optional. We'll talk about that in a moment. So meso is hate. Philo is love. This is our general sort of distinction, both coming from the Greek, as did actually neo, meso, and paleo. I think I forgot to say that. But these both come from Greek. So meso we see in words like misogyny, someone who hates women, or misogamy, someone who hates marriage and the idea of marriage. Philo we see in a lot more contexts. So you can see it as a kind of true root of a word. In a word like philanthropy, for instance, the O in that case does drop out, which is literally like love of mankind. But you also see it converted into a kind of suffix in a lot of places. So you will see in English words that end with phile, right, where they've taken it and they added the E to it to complete the suffix, and that means a lover of something. A bibliophile is a lover of books and reading. Okay. We see it combined with ick, which we have learned as an adjectival meaning. This tends to show up in scientific and especially chemical contexts, and it refers to the properties of a substance. So some substances that is hydrophilic mixes with water. Hydro, we're going to learn soon, is water. So the sense is like it mixes with something easily. Then we also see it combined with the ending ia, which we haven't learned quite yet. And then there's also an adjectival form which adds the C, philia and philiac. This tends to refer to sexual preferences, right? The philia refers to a particular sexual preference. Philiac is one who has this particular sexual preference. So you may have heard of the condition of necrophilia. It's the sexual attraction to necros, is a corpse, a dead body. And so a necrophiliac is one who practices necrophilia. So feel meaning love or attraction or something like that shows up in a lot of contexts in English words. Okay. Let me see if I think one more left of our prefixes. We have multi. This is a Latin one. It's got that I, which is true of a lot of the Latin ones. Multi means many. So we see something like multifaceted, something has a lot of facets, right? It's a pretty straightforward one. Okay, sorry about that. My computer battery started dying, so I had to act quick. Okay, so we just have a couple suffixes for this time. I only picked a few because a lot of them are going to do double duty. So let me show you what I mean by that. So my first set is airy, airy, and ori. So already it's a little annoying, isn't it? Because it's A-R-Y, E-R-Y, and O-R-Y, which are very, very similar. And they do have really similar meanings too. So airy, when I mentioned that they do double duty, both airy and ori we will see used for both adjectives and nouns. It is capable of making both. So airy can mean something like pertaining to, connected with, and in that case be an adjective, and we see a word like sedentary. Sedentary, it's pertaining to sitting. Sedent is sitting. It doesn't move a lot, it's sedentary. But at the same time, it can mean a thing or a place connected with something. In that case, it's a noun. Think of the word library. A library is a place connected with books, and it is a noun. Airy, E-R-Y, actually is really only used for nouns. It's actually, E-R-Y is, the airy and ori, we will see now, are Latin suffixes that English has taken out of Latin. E-R-Y is what happened when native English speakers took the A-R-Y ending and they changed the spelling up a little bit, and they made E-R-Y. But they only use it for nouns, and so E-R-Y means something like a place, an art, a condition of something. So trickery is the condition of being tricky. A brewery is a place where you brew beer, and so on. But ori is quite like airy. Ori, too, can be used as an adjective, meaning something like having to do with or characterized. Think of a word like sensory. Something that's sensory has to do with the senses. But it can also be the thing or the place connected or pertaining to something. In this case, we could think of a word like laboratory. A laboratory is a place connected with literally work, right? I mean, today's scientific work specifically, but literally, according to the morphs, it's a place connected with work, okay? So we have to be more careful with endings like airy and ori, because without any context, we cannot know, right? If you just see a word you don't know and it's not in a sentence or something, you won't be able to pick it out. You have to look it up in that case. If it's in a sentence, then you have a good chance of figuring it out because you can guess if that's a noun or an adjective most of the time. All right. And then only one other suffix for today, and that is oid. I mentioned in one of our previous lectures that we talked about the Latin root vid, viz, which is to see, and I said, oh, it comes from a Proto-Indo-European root, which also gives us the Greek id, id, in words like idol or kaleidoscope. It actually is part of this too. This is a Greek suffix, and it means seeming like something, and in this way it forms an adjective. That being said, frequently those adjectives are converted through conversion into nouns. And so you get a lot of nouns too that end in oid that just mean a thing like. Okay, so the adjective, it means something like likes this, and the noun is a thing like this. And oftentimes we see a word that ends in oid can function as both. So for an adjective, you could think of something like a spheroid, kind of shape that's like a sphere, or it can refer to the property of a shape, the property being like a sphere. So a shape can be spheroid, or it can be aspheroid. And for noun, again, we could do spheroid, or we could do something like android. An android literally means a thing that is like a man, right? We'll learn andra soon. So yeah, with oid, it has this sense of a thing like, because it contains this root within it of like seeing or seeming. But it can be used here as either an adjective or a noun because so many examples have been converted in English from an adjective to a noun. Okay, that's it for this set of affixes. Thanks for watching. Bye.